Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss the nearing deadline for EU citizens in the UK to apply for settled status and worries for what will happen to those, well, not aware that they even need to do this, but even those who are and actually put in their applications a long time ago and still haven't had them processed. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So ordinarily, of course, this should not really be such a massive deal. The Conservatives are fully aware that we rely upon workers from abroad to drive our economy. This is why Conservative governments, including the one that's been in place since 2010, talk a good show on controlling immigration, but then do nothing about it. Blaming the EU instead, that was always easy. But now a couple of things have changed. One, although we are still blaming the EU for everything now that we've left, I suspect even the gammons would smell a rat if the government started blaming the EU for our own immigration policies when we are outside of the union, outside of the customs union and outside of the single market. So they've accidentally become responsible for their own immigration rules now. Secondly, we have a vindictive homicidal maniac as Home Secretary. So I do worry somewhat for the 446,000 EU citizens that have already received settled status, as that hasn't stopped some of them being detained when they've returned to the UK from a trip abroad. And I remember when people were saying that these people needed physical documentation for this. Nah, be right, said the government. Digital confirmation will be fine. In fact, it'll be better. But it's not fine. There was an example relayed on a BBC article on this from an academic who was talking to someone as part of their studies who'd been living in this country for 40 years. But they didn't know they needed to apply for special status. They knew about Brexit, knew about this, that and the other. They didn't know about that. After all, you've lived in a country for 4 decades. Why would you think that you had to apply for something else, unless someone told you different? But also, he didn't have a modern smartphone, so he couldn't really get it anyway. The digital nature of the application and verification process makes it impossible for many. You can apply, you could always try and get help with someone who's got the facilities for you to apply, but you can't actually get your digital certificate if you haven't got a device to digitize it on. It's like the government have made it as difficult as possible for their own scheme to work. And if you have settled status, but you don't have a smartphone, or you don't have a suitable smartphone, you get no benefit from it. You can't prove that you have this status to anyone who would need to see it, because the status certificate is entirely digital, not so much as a letter. And I have no confidence that this is just incompetence, and that when reality hits, the government will go, oh, right, yeah, okay, sorry, we did. Like with everything else, when they're warned about something far in advance and it all goes tits up and they go, oh, we didn't realise. We told you about it. Oh, yeah, we'll sort it. I don't think there will be a rush to sort this out. We have a Home Office that actively seeks ways to deport people unlawfully. I would say just for the kicks in the gammon press, but I think Patel draws more personal satisfaction. Can you imagine if the government made their new ID requirements for voting in the same way? We wouldn't have to worry about whether Keir Starmer really has a cunning plan or not, because a good chunk of Conservative voters would be instantly denied the ability to vote. So now we're in a position where we are in the month where the deadline to apply for settled status is about to expire. There are worries that there may be EU citizens living in the UK that are still not even aware that they need to apply. After all, they've been told in the past that they would be allowed to remain in the UK after Brexit. Oh, that's grand, they said. Some may not have gotten the memo that things have changed and that there's this application process. I mean, even those who have been granted settled status are not actually all as settled as we would like. About half of them were given what's technically known as pre-settled status. So what it means is you can remain for 5 more years, then you have to reapply. And I suspect this will be with the aim of shrinking our economy to cope with fewer workers. And so basically when the time comes for the applications in 2025, 2026, we have the possibility of just extending it again if the shipment of Brexit unicorns hasn't arrived by then. Or in reality, I think what I'd really worry about is that they will intend to deny all these settled status. And the thing is as well, if you have to keep applying for it, it's very difficult for like employment or even getting a home, because your employer has to check this status, your landlord would have to check it. And if you're you're coming to the end of it and you're in the middle of applying, but you don't have the extension yet, they'll be like thinking, well, I need a tenant that's going to stay here for a while, or, I need to give this job to someone, they're going to get trained up and everything. I need them to be here for a few years, and they may not take a punt. And it's the government have certainly not been promoting this either, that they need to apply. I only know about it myself from an active interest in following government. I haven't really seen anything that I would have seen had I not been particularly interested in politics. And if people wake up on July the 1st to find that they're living in the UK unlawfully, I can't imagine they're going to be met with any sympathy from the authorities here. I'm not looking forward to their inhuman treatment just so that the Express and the Mail can publish scenes reminiscent of the 1930s Germany. I'd like to think this won't happen. I'd like to think we'd get scenes like we saw in Scotland, for example, when the Home Office was shown the door by the local neighbourhood. But I have absolutely nothing to pin that hope on generally around the UK. There have been calls for some time to produce a physical settled status certificate for people to use. I mean, imagine needing NHS treatment or to prove your status to the police or an employer, but you can't because you've got the wrong type of phone. Or just because your phone is playing up in an emergency, you need emergency care, your phone's playing up. Absolute madness. Nobody could be that incompetent, especially when these issues have been pointed out to them. That the government have maintained the digital-only version can only be because they want to exclude as many people as possible, and also because they take some grim pleasure in imagining the suffering of people who have settled status but inevitably get themselves into trouble at various times trying to prove it. I bet they have a bit of an old laugh about that behind closed doors. The government defended this by saying that a secure digital status, well, it can't be lost, it can't be stolen, can't be damaged or tampered with. No, also can't be shown to anyone when you need it if you don't have an expensive phone. And also, I still go back to this concept of ID for voting. So the government say we need to bring in ID for voting to stop fraud, for which there's no evidence anyway. Well, why are they wanting us to use a form that can, in their own words, be tampered with? Shouldn't we also have this digital version only? Shouldn't that be expected? Shouldn't we have to turn up with our smartphones to be able to vote? There were also calls to extend the scheme because of the pandemic. No such luck there either. Bear in mind that although I can say we are near the end of our third lockdown, there are some parts of the country that, let's be honest, have never really come out of lockdown since it first began in March 2020. It's parts of the north of England who are like, third lockdown? We've never been out of lockdown. Life has been badly disrupted, and how would some, especially elderly EU citizens, even know that they needed to apply for this if they're a bit isolated and the government didn't write to them, which they didn't? You were supposed to know about this from what? Going online, basically? With, some form of connection that people would have come across, or if you're not that connected. And from the point of view of the civil service processing the applications, that have been made in plenty of time, but you're not yet dealt with. That's been slowed down by the pandemic as well. The government itself has been slowed down. When you've got reports of some people applying in very good time and a year later, that application's still not been dealt with, despite pressing the issue in some cases. Some people have got documentary evidence that they've chased the issue up. Well, what of people who may have only just applied or may still be applying over the next couple of weeks? No serious effort to contact people about the process. There's been no accounting of the isolated nature of some citizens due to the pandemic at the very least, if not in general. No accounting of the reduced capacity to even process the applications on the government side, and people are being asked for their status. For example, an employer or landlord needs to make sure that their employee or tenant, respectively, has the right documentation, or they could be in a lot of trouble. The government has said you shouldn't need to see this before June the 30th, but if someone is hiring right now or agreeing a tenancy right now, it's like, well, I need your tenancy to last more than 2 weeks, so I need to see it. In theory, and as I say, they weren't supposed to be asking for them, but you've got to be fair, they don't want to deal with the mess on July the 1st. And if people aren't getting their applications processed in a timely manner, it's just adding unnecessary distress to everyone involved. And I suspect that is the intention. And it's all very well the government saying that they will accept late applications when there is a good excuse, but without actually stating what a good excuse is. Who decides what is a good excuse? The xenophobic Home Office? Good luck with that. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.